Hey, Andrew, I have a slightly different view here. Let me see if I can see you better. Uh,
Good morning. I guess not morning for you guys, but it
yeah,
is
it's
over here. Hi,
kind of.
Mark.
Oh, there we go. The view is up here. Oh, that's better. It looks like it's morning for Mark.
No, afternoon. No, just resurfacing. I had, what was it, shingles and pneumonia vaccines on Monday. And they said you might feel a bit under the weather. I must say, I was flat on my back yesterday. Definitely no mojo at all, but sanity has returned today, luckily.
Indeed. Just trying to deal with
So,
this read.ai thing that's on here. Not sure. I tried it. I thought it would do transcripts for us, but it doesn't, and I can't figure out how to turn it off. Uh,
hey, well, here's a modern life for you. So you now have an automated lurker who doesn't appear to do anything.
yeah, that's that's exactly what it is. Remove. Okay, cool. Removed. Yeah. Oh, Andrew, did you build the lines? Did you manage to do the TED lines?
No, the lines require like things built below it, so I'm sort of restabilizing the save state system to then put the lines in because the lines are linked to that hidden setting we talked about inside of the library. So I need to have that working first. So it's like there's layers to things, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's reality. That's reality. So one update I can give you while we're waiting for Fabien, who may be late due to clock issues, is it seems, yeah, oh no, that was just Mark in the background. So here's the thing. It seems that parsing text out of a PDF is not actually expensive computationally anymore. So that's good. So we'll talk about that. So what I've talked to him briefly about over the last few days is the very original visual meta approach, where we put things in a PDF that are keywords and all that kind of stuff, but also the entirety of the document. So if we actually get that working, that will be interesting. He will probably, when I bring this up, refer to his companion app, which is something we may rename, where this can be done on a desktop before it's sent to the headset. So what you have, Andrew, may very well still just be JSON based, but it does mean that author and so on can more easily encode fun stuff because of this companion app. And the companion app can be inside author, reader, on a server or on the headset or somewhere else. So it's a freestanding text extraction, making sure it's on the right JSON thing.
When you say the parsing, so you mean something that actually goes and reads the postscript? Because that's the only unambiguous place you can actually find the original
Yeah,
character of the text.
we can ask we can ask Fabien about that. But in my experience, a cleanly created PDF, such as from author, which doesn't do fancy things, in other words, how we present at the back of it in a single column, does well.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't doubt it, but that's a very small amount of PDFs. That's the only sort of
Yeah, but
creep you'd have in the background. So no, the thing that sits behind it is it scalable to the general thing?
no. But this is not on an issue of scalability. This is on an issue of us experimenting with where we can deal with metadata. So this is not about taking crappy old PDFs and stuff. Fabien, before we properly start, and thank you for rushing. I don't know how you managed that, but that's an impressive feat because you thought you'd be very late. I saw your message. Um, yeah, yeah, just before we get into everything, since it's just the techies here now, please say correctly what I have interpreted as with the companion app taking the visual meta type metadata out of a PDF and making it available in JSON.
So, hello everyone. Uh,
Hello.
I don't know what you interpreted, so I'll say what happens, and then we'll see what people think of it, or even understand if it's clear or not. So currently, the goal of the companion app is to receive files. A lot of those files don't work in VR, for example, PDF, and there is no reader in the operating system to read such files like PDF. So what I do, I convert them to, let's say, JPEG or PNG, to images, and then I show those images. So that's roughly what's happening. Once I have done that, though, I thought, well, why just PDF? Even though it's nice for documents, some documents are not PDF, and some of them are JSON. And a lot of them that I use are JSON, like even GLB 3D models, they are JSON. So basically, I'll start with this. And then some of the JSON that we discussed before and that reader is using and author is producing are JSON file. Like in the liquid directory, there are JSON files. Two of those JSON files, one of them, I think called dynamic view.json, is basically the graph of different concepts that are positioned in space. And there is a glossary attached to it, which say those two concepts, for example, one of them at least mentioned the other one. And basically what I did with the help of Frode is to interpret and parse those JSON files so that it display basically the graph that corresponds to the data in those JSON files. So there is no intermediary steps or anything. If you drag and drop those files in the directory, it's going to parse them and then show them in VR. You can then grab the concept to move them around and eventually do the other typical thing like saving back the layout or whatever else you need. But basically, those files are now interpreted. It can be done another way, but yeah, basically like this. And I think what I hope to highlight with this is the importance of plain old files, let's say. And it's something I try to write a little bit back for the book itself, namely that we switched to mobiles, like telephones, which made us switch to apps. And apps, they hide away the files from the users, but in practice, it's files behind the curtain. And I thought, and it's also like, thanks Frode for forcing me to write this, because I did not really think about it. I was just doing it, but now I had to step back in order to express it. And it's the same with this, because as I was telling people when I give workshop, those two things are the same thing. They are computers, they're on battery, but in practice, they're computers. But the problem is this is the successor of that, and thus it used the same model, namely apps, without the files. And sometimes when people fight for it, you can export file from the apps and then get the files back. Anyway, all this to say, files go to, thanks to the companion, they go to a 3D world that can be used in VR. And some of those files include indeed the unmodified format that a reader and author are using in order to display content in space.
So this is obviously wonderful, but I want to just double check on the thing that is closest to my heart, which is this means with modifications that we can take a PDF that has visual meta, and the visual meta can relatively easily be extracted and sent to an XR device along with the original file if required, right?
Probably. I want to say I'm 99% sure. I don't want to say 100% because just I haven't done it, but it should be the case, yes.
Because I'm writing a piece for the book called The Two-Page Spread Extended, which reflects a lot of our recent discussion on reading on, at least for me, reading something like a two-page spread. Is it really comfortable? You know, it works. But of course, we want the rich interactivity. So it's the pros and cons of how to stretch and how to. And also, the original Sloan proposal was very heavy on the visual metadata, which was supposed to be incorporated with reader and author. It's explicitly in there. It seems that along the things we're doing, we can do this. And one thing Fabien and I discussed randomly on the phone last week was also extending this a bit to an exciting thing whereby, of course now, and by the way, just to make it obvious, every time I say author, I mean to generalize that to any word processor who wants to use this. We'll make it, all the source will be open for anybody else to use any of this. I'm not trying to make just a thing. Anyway, you paste as code into your word processor, and it's not pasted just plain. It pastes it with metadata, so that you may choose to show, let's say, a paragraph of code, something illustrative. The rest of it goes in the metadata at the back. And it goes with what language it is, what's all the different bits you may need to run the code. So that when you then are in an environment which can take advantage of this, you can select that code and run it. Mark, please. Oh, by the way, the new M4 MacBook Pros got released as this meeting started. So
I'm already behind the curve ordering my new one. Right, okay. Lee, I'll park that to one side. I was thinking, funnily enough, on this thing of copy, which sort of came up at the end of the Monday meeting, and it was noodling around in my head because we said, what do we call it? I thought, actually, and I went back and looked at things. Copy has always been full copy. Other things have been modified, so they're copy minus, not copy plus, which is why I was thinking, no, you don't want to rename it. If you want something specific, the reason people get confused about this is copy puts everything on the clipboard, but often developers, because they're only working for themselves, they don't bother to tag stuff. They don't explain what it is, or they don't encode it properly. So for apps that do inter-app exchange, it's a nightmare. But broadly, the stuff is all there. So copy probably puts it there anyway. In most systems, and as they get more sophisticated, there are more things. So I think and also if you want to move the needle, what you want is for copy to remain. Yeah, copy everything. You don't have to use what you don't want, and it's a bit like sort of photo metadata. If you've got a really old thing that reads photos and can't read photo metadata, it just doesn't know it reads the image block. So I think, in a sense, there's less need to worry about that. What actually is more useful in this instance is just to explain how the copy, the default, the copy we expect people to make has been enriched. And the key thing that I sort of take from it, for experience of watching this along the way, is to make absolutely damn sure that this is something again that Chris Guthridge will bring up. It has to explain what it is, which is actually non-trivial. That sounds, it sounds quite trite, but it's basically a machine has to be able to figure out this thing that it's not met before. What is it? Can I use it? So it sort of needs to know sort of roughly what it is. Like, I'm a Spanish person, not a Croat person. But if you need to know what a Croat person is, you need to go look over here, because you can't put it all in everything all the time. That just balloons out of scale, because effectively, if you think about it, that would mean that every document would have to contain all the knowledge we have, because if you never looked anything up, and this is where I think if you take that lesson on board, you understand why the dereferencing gets really, really important, and the quality of the explanation structure. And although it's hidden way, way behind the curtain, it's probably the weakest link in the whole thing.
That makes sense. Yeah, okay, so that was really worth going into, and Fabien's going to go into that more from his perspective. I just needed to a little bit. So we're waiting for Deanie. Hope she'll be here soon, but we can start with a few small things. So on my side, author update, author Mac is all very happy now. We have assigned as code. Just visually, you select text in the document, it gets blue, and then on export, it becomes the font you want. For some reason, making the font live in the document turned out to be not really feasible with all the years of spaghetti code we have, so fair enough. It's a hidden function. If you're not producing a book, you're not even going to know it's there. The iOS version hasn't been working since the latest iOS update, but I think they fixed it today. I just don't have a build. Book updates going well. Jonathan and I have started doing some basic edits, sending things back and forth with people. Yeah, Andrew, we need screenshots of the current. We'll wait until you have the TED lines, so that can wait a few more days. When do you think that will be done?
Um, I plan to focus on that next, because I got that foundation for the save state working last night. So lines should be coming next, and then I'll go and build the save state into the new system, and all that. But that's future. So with the lines, since I'm about to work on it, do you care kind of what they look like or where they point to, or is it just, hey, I want lines from the references that pop up? Because if you have something visually in your mind, I'd love to see a mock-up of that. If you don't, I'll just come up with something.
Hi, Peter. Yeah, no,
Oh,
I absolutely do care about that. Yeah, I can do a mock-up, but it should be relatively obvious, and I don't want you to do any kind of design that is onerous, both in terms of coding and in taxing and running. It's basically a lighter gray line than the text itself that goes to the center of the document, to the center of the citation. That makes sense, right? Yeah, I can see Mark nodding. You should
Sure.
feel,
You want it to the center? That's fine.
yeah, and please, while you're working on it, if you want to send some updates, screenshots on Slack, that would be really, really cool. Just to,
Do we want a black line so it's not too in your face, or do we want a white line so it matches our style, but then it could conflict with our white text?
I think not black. Very, very rarely does that work with a gray background with black and white. I've been working on that today with a related thing, and it's really, really tough. So yeah.
Okay, I'll just do white, and we'll see how it looks.
yeah. You might want to just dial down from the ends. The issue, but the issue comes the more links you put in, the more actually the more visual disturbance you get. So you're right. So it's actually quite hard to test with one line because you don't really see the effect until there's almost more lines than background, which is the
Yeah.
point at which it sort of it rather overtakes, which I think was the question. What was underlying your question?
Which I guess luckily the lines are going to be an optional feature.
Yeah, and one thing that might be nice, either as the default or if you can have it as an option, is only a reference floating in space which is selected will show a line.
Well, we don't have selection, so I'm not sure how that would work.
Well, we have select to move, right?
So like you're saying just when you're dragging it, it has the line?
When you
That's
do,
fine. That kind of makes sense.
no, I think that would be a bit confusing. But do we have a selection in the sense that the system will know what you last moved, so it can then leave it up for a period of time after you say
Yeah,
you
so you're
move
saying
it?
you just want the line visible if you just dragged it. As soon as you do anything else, it goes away.
I wonder. I don't know. What does everyone else think?
It
So
depends on what the point of the lines are, right?
yeah, what are the lines doing during the drag? In other words, what is the knowledge/sense aspect? Forget the tech for a second. Think of it as an informational problem. So what is it you're wanting to show or to capture?
It is the basic thing is when you open a document and you see the references on the side and you drag a reference out, that reference now will have a line connecting it to where it came from. That's it. And it is 90% to please Ted Nelson. Right?
Okay.
It may turn out to be a bit of research that was bad, which is fine. Then we take screenshots and we write it down as it just didn't make sense. But it's the thing he's been screaming about for decades.
My suggestion is that not knowing how hard it is to implement. But if it's a pig to keep the lines updated in place during the drag, I would not rush to implement that from get-go, as long as the line's there at stop. I know what happens is the first person to test it will drag something and they'll keep dragging it around, and then I mean, I've done this, and then you get obsessed by the fact they can't see the line. If you just stop dragging the thing, the line will appear. So I think we will, that's something that can be done later. And the other thing about the color of the lines, if we design it that can be altered at some later point, I don't mean it's going to have yet another sort of dial on the screen or something, but the point being that it's the color it is at the moment, but the color is an emergent property that we've yet to experiment with, because until we've built enough of these things out, you can't really check what the right color is. We shouldn't waste too much time, doing the old Google thing of getting the right shade of blue for the link, because it's a fool's errand.
The funny thing, Mark, with your concern about the tech not being able to keep up, it's actually easier for me because of the way I built this to have it show up when you're moving the drag and then go away when you stop dragging than the other way around. Just weird how that is, because of the save system. If they're visible
Yep.
when you're not dragging, it means that the lines now have to save. And because these are separate components that are spawned at individual times, that gets incredibly convoluted. So if we just want the lines to show up when it's being dragged, it's easier.
Okay, do that. I agree. That's a great experiment. It sounds reasonable.
Path of least resistance.
Yeah. Because I mean, in a sense, this is all experiment and trying to get. I mean, trying to overguess the right solution is always difficult, because normally all that happens is, as we put one more feature in place, you find there's something else that one trips over that's probably going to amend the original choice anyway. I mean, I think that's the nature of these things, which is why I probably seem more relaxed about it than perhaps I should.
Yeah, so that's good. So we okay. So we've agreed on that. Visible on dragging. That's it. That's great. Um, so yeah, Andrew, and then we need to have some screenshots. What is the best way to get screenshots of what you have built?
What do you mean the best way?
Highest quality. Is it?
Well, I just made a 3-minute demo for Genie, so it was recorded in the Vision, so it's high resolution. So we could just screenshot that at any point. You've got a whole video to go through that shows all the features. Um, so if you just want to grab some screenshots, that's there and working. If you have a specific shot that you want framed, then like let me know and I'll go out of my way and get that and send it to you on Slack or something.
Yeah, thank you. The problem with the vision is that it's foveated rendering. So if you aren't looking at something, it's actually quite bad with the tests that I've been doing. So I'm going to ask a really naive question, and I know we're being recorded, but here you go. To run what you have in a 2D web browser, which of course cannot be done right now, how much work would be necessary to do that? Because A, screenshots, and B, it opens up a wider audience, even though, of course, the experience will be awful compared to being in there properly. I'm guessing the most thing is that you won't have the interactions with the hand and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have interaction. The thing is, if that was something that we wanted, I could have tried to build it in earlier. Um, I'm not going to say it's impossible because right now we just on a browser we just say, hey, you don't have any VR stuff, don't worry about it. If we really wanted to work with that, it would be possible to update that and give it like an orbital control so you can drag the camera around the space and click on things, which would trigger the pointer. A lot of stuff wouldn't work, right? But um, you could do basic stuff. That's not built in right now, and it would take a lot of work to build it in because we're so deep into the project. But I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just
Okay.
it would be a lot of work. It would not be faster if you're just trying to get screenshots.
No, 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 that's totally fine. So, Fabian, I'm going to ask you, because you've done a lot with screenshots and so on. What Andrew has now, how would you take screenshots of it? Would you just use one of the headsets and record, or what? Is that a big or what?
Yeah. No, The screenshot, it's a bit tricky. Depends on what's trying to be shown. If, like, for example, if it has to be passed through or not, then it's better to typically use screen copy, for example, on Android than the native one, I find. Also, yeah, an image rather than a video usually gives better result, but it's what I suggested to you, Frode, last time we had a similar discussion is what I think is best. I don't know if Andrew would confirm or not, but is for me as if you ask like a movie director, let's say, I want this shot, I want the camera there, like the virtual camera, I want this kind of things to appear, etc. Because I think, at least for me, I tend to think about the technical thing, like how the sausage is made, and I don't necessarily have the viewpoint of somebody who is just like, hey, what is this project? What's happening? And I think you do that better. But it means there is a bit of not choreography, but mise en place. There is to be a little bit of things that, like, how are they supposed to happen? How to get the best ever resolution, I think comparatively matters less.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just, there was an interesting sort of thing just slipped through there when Andrew was asking earlier, and I'll pick the words carefully. That you'd intimated that, well, if we wanted to show more stuff on screen, we might have taken a different fork in the road earlier. So how fundamental is that? I'm not suggesting we sort of flagellate ourselves for past choices, but I'm just interested at the degree of divergence, because I totally get the point that if you're aiming to produce a system that broadly has these in the mix as a sort of essentially the selectors, that's quite different than if you basically got this, or a trackpad if you prefer, to operate with. So I suppose the nested question is it to a degree either or is there potentially both and? Though I suspect the latter may come with attendant penalties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's both and I would say. Um, but it's just the point where the both is added is important just because of time. If we had planned that from the beginning, what I would have done is link mouse click to the same function that does the pointer. And then I would have done like raycasts from the desktop camera as well as from the hand. I would have like linked them into single functions. So they send the same code in the end. Basically, it's another layer. So I would have had like an interface function running behind the scenes that then works with all my code. Right now, it's just the gestures go directly to that code. So there's like an extra layer that needs to be added to everything. If that had been built from the beginning, it would have been simpler. But it's not too late to add it now. It's just finding all of the moving pieces would take a while.
Sure, and it seems anyway at this point it's probably nugatory to spend the time. I think the main thing I'm thinking from, in a sense, from of describing the research that's done as saying, okay, well, one of the things that's turned out here is because I think what we're seeing is that because it's not as if we're all going to be using 2D screens one day and the next we're all walking around with headsets on. That just seems implausible. So because the crossover will probably be quite long, and I suspect far less rapid than, say, the uptake of the smartphone, that it may be that actually we're almost sort of forced to look at that sort of both thing. But I hasten to add, I don't read that as a misstep. It doesn't really worry me at all, and it's all part of the research process.
Could be interesting too, if I have more development time, like maybe right after the symposium before the end of the year. Because I know some of the funding like runs out partially in December. But if I have a little bit of time, maybe we could focus on that.
Yeah, you're okay with funding, Andrew, but no, I'm sorry, Peter. Just wanted to reflect on Mark. I don't think we should make it accessible in 2D at all, unless that was literally flipping a switch, because we need to be focused on the medium that it is. And 3D has been available, of course, for decades on computer systems and always been awkward. unless you have a game controller and you're playing a game where your job is to move forward and shoot, rather than to move around and to move information, I think it'll be really cack-handed, and we will be going back. So I don't think we should spend.
I'd agree. I'd agree. So I'll clarify. Saying no, I wasn't. I wasn't suggesting anything sort of quite so all-encompassing. I was just merely reflecting on where this started out from, was the difficulty of sort of basically trying to see outside a headset what you see inside the screen grab. So the ability to at least not so much run the environment completely via a sort of desktop screen, but more just being able to have some degree of visibility of it. I think in a sense that's a useful part, because it also I think draws into something that Fabien had picked up about the onboarding process and the teaching.
Yeah, it would be nice for screenshots, but it's just not that important, and I certainly don't want people to think that what we're doing.
Well, I wouldn't be. That's a very bold statement. I don't think it's not important. I mean, it's something to maybe prioritize, but we started out by saying, well, how do we get pictures of it? And one of the ways is that we might need to view it through a screen. So that runs slightly counter to your opening point.
No, it doesn't, Mark, because there are relative priorities. The priority of having a great screenshot versus a good screenshot is basically just for the book, and it's not that big a deal. The screenshot, they look okay. The concern I have is to spend not just Andrew's time doing a 2D interaction for it, but also that we then might think about how that might be useful in some way. And that is a very different thing. Anyway, Andrew has pointed out the difficulty, and I think, Mark, we generally agree anyway. Okay, Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to redrop a link I posted last Friday, I think it was. There was a project using webcams to be able to simulate hand tracking from a headset on a regular laptop. So Andrew might want to take a look at that. I don't know whether it's something that would be usable in his system or not, but it just suggests that the tech is potentially out there. And that could sort of smooth the transition between headsets and laptops.
Personally, I don't think we should smooth that transition. I think we should dive in, but it's really cool to see it as a tech demo, Peter, so thank you.
So we had the discussion, Peter, a couple of months, maybe a year ago or more, when you didn't try VR yet. And I was against this, and I'm still against this, because I think, I mean, it's worth to try it, it's worth to explore, but the problem is, and it's something that if you try like a VR emulator, there is an emulator where it looks like you have your hands and you can grab like things on it, and it's just awful. It's just super painful because you think you're in front of the object, but in 3D, you're too far or too close, or you're too high or too low. And you keep on adjusting left and right, etc. And it's not impossible, but it's basically super painful. And it means the onboarding would not be a good one for a lot of cases. If we slap everything again, if we flatten everything, let's say on a board, let's say a whiteboard or kind of thing, it might be feasible because we lose the dimension. But if we do it 3D, it's like, again, I remember we had this discussion because you explained your 3D mouse and there are a lot of different inputs, but it's not the same to use a 3D mouse or any kind of 3D input on a 2D screen to move 2D objects around a plane and in 3D, because it's so painful. You start to do it and then you have to basically switch the axis and then adjust and switch the axis and then adjust. So if there is literally any other choice, why not? But otherwise, it's really because people are going to. I don't know. It's going to happen like this. I'm pretty sure. It's like, why 3D? Okay, well, I don't really get it, but I'm going to try your system. And then instead of showing the proper system, namely with a headset and with 6DoF and hand tracking, they try a flattened version on it. That is not going to be a good experience and removes some of the added value. So I think it's interesting to mention it, and I might miss something, but if it's what I think it is, the results so far, at least for me, and when I let people try it, it's been deserving. It's not been positive.
It's interesting to hear though, Peter, because of the passion it brings out on us. And I would say there's also the opposite that's interesting, and that is to bring the physical trackpad and keyboard into XR. Because to just wave about in space, I don't think is all that great often. But you know, when I'm working with a keyboard in XR, I have a thing to touch. So I'm very much in favor of doing the opposite, of having more physical things in XR. Fabien?
Yeah, because it's the opposite. One is like flattening 6 degrees of freedom input to a plane, and the other is you already have 6 degrees of freedom, but on top of it, we add, let's say, a keyboard because we're talking about text, or we add speech to text or whatnot. So any additional input that we can bring to XR, I'm all for it, especially keyboard. Honestly, this also the pen, anything like this, love it. But because it's more input, basically, and if we can pick the right input for the right task, like some people might hate typing, but they love to draw, and the other way around. So more input, more diverse input, like 100%. Flattening or trying to make it happen. Again, I don't like the headset. I don't want to have a headset. But I've never experienced proper 6 degrees of freedom in anything but a headset. And I've tried like the fancy screens. I have also a small one there, like caves and all. It's just not the same.
Peter, after all that, yes, back to you.
Yeah, I think we should try to get Andrew that pen. I sent a link to a web form where you can put in as a developer, and maybe they'll send him a free one. So fingers crossed that that'd be possible. Also, I think the keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard with the headset could be really sweet. I was really impressed with the Quest. I have the little MX keyboard from Logitech that works with Bluetooth connection, and I can toggle it between talking to my Macintosh and talking to the headset. And that's really, really sweet when I have the headset bringing the Mac screen into VR so I can just have the one keyboard and bounce between them. At first, the headset couldn't recognize it, but in the latest software updates, when I'm in my immersive virtual environment, it's able to detect the location of the keyboard. Then in VR, it's drawing a representation of the keyboard so I can see where it is in front of me and get my fingers on it. It was very bad at first. Now it's almost usable. It still gets the angle of the keyboard off a little bit, but it's certainly enough for my fingers to be able to find the home keys, and then we're home to the races.
Yeah, no, it's very good. I use it all the time when I work in the Vision. Although I agree with Fabien, I would prefer not to work in a headset, but to have the same view. Fabien?
No, it's an old hand.
My turn to ask a naive question. So, pulling together some things that we've just bounced through, and I'm very much taking on board Fabien's point about the sort of comparative sterility of a simulated flat 3D display-based thing with the real thing is that, and as I spend an awful lot of my time sort of teaching tools and the whole onboarding process sits quite close in the front of my mind, is that I suppose, I don't know about the Apple, but certainly the Oculus is essentially by intent its initial start point is it's a single user environment. What's at the back of my mind is that what I see coming out of this, and I watched some of our attempts to show things, and we're in Poznan and we've done other demos, is that telling someone to do something and then them doing it in a completely different environment is quite hard. Some people, I mean, we're all on an ability sort of level. So, some people get it immediately. Most people probably will be somewhere in the middle. And I'm just wondering, and this isn't the start of a rabbit hole. I'm really just parking an observation, which is to say, are there any easy handholds for us where you'd want an onboarding experience which would posit, say, even if we restrict, say, even locally, so we're not trying to do it to the far side of the world, but basically that the person standing next to you is explaining how to use the thing, is actually standing in the environment with you, so that they're actually explaining to you in the environment you're in, not the one that you're trying to imagine that you haven't used. And I'll leave it at that. But as I say, I don't want this to be a rabbit hole, but I think it's a useful marker to put in the narrative.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. We do need to keep going through the agenda there, and there will be greater Fabien discussion in a minute. But on that point, I think we have to separate, as we talked about on Monday, the difference between experimenting and experiencing for research versus what we choose to want to have widely used. I think we need to do both, but of course they are to a certain degree exclusive of another. And so I think that a lot of the interactions we're doing here with Andrew, they will be for a user who has read a paragraph of introduction. If we could have a person, an avatar in XR to explain it, that would be brilliant. There's no question about that. But I think that is to the side of our main quest.
Yeah, the challenge with an avatar always falls short because an avatar can only answer. It's like when you go to a company's website and say, "Would you like to buy more licenses?" You're thinking, "No, I came here because there's something you hadn't explained." So the issue is somebody, and I see it in a few nodding heads. The issue is that when you're trying to teach a software-based experience, there are things that because we all have different perspectives, different abilities, whatever. There are things that you just can't cover in terms of the guide. You can cover in the general guide, but the last 10% is the bit where you probably need someone, in a sense, very close in terms of the environment and experience to you. That's really what I was drawing on.
Yes, but there are some things that are non-obvious in this, and we need to at least spend some time writing it down at the very minimum to have it in the book, not just a few screenshots, but also saying, these things are clickable, but these things you need to drag for something to happen, etc. So it's something not to be ignored for sure, Mark. Okay, so just going through the agenda here a little bit. I have to go through a little bit of the of who's going to be here, but for Mark, Fabien, and Andrew, Peter, I wish you could be there too. You're joining for the dinner on the Friday, right? That's just a dinner where we go out. Yes, yes, good. And then the plan is on the Saturday, there will be a kind of a canapé type thing after the event that finishes at 5. And then we're just going to go for another dinner, self-hosted dinner after that, not too far away. So that's all good. On Sunday, it will be, the only thing organized is we have a nice, in one of the hotels, like a B&B hotel, we have the living room, so to speak, to sit and chat. We can do whatever we want, go for a walk, go for a hike, sit there and so on. I need to find out who else will be joining us. That's my job. So under the status of symposium bit on the agenda, there is this book. Now, Brantel's going to do the mural for us, I hope. My job is to give him an image of that. So when all the pages are done, I need to make a giant JPEG or PNG or whatever he prefers. Fabien's going to talk to us a bit more about the companion today, right, Fabien? Excellent. And also, what I really, really want, and I think is important, is, as we discussed in the very beginning a little bit, I really want all the useful data should be in the book, in the visual meta. We can encode it at JSON. I'm totally happy with that. To do some experiment, because it's really core to what we're doing. One thing, just to tell you personally, I'm very happy with what we're doing. I'm extremely grateful for the community, and even my own software is doing okay at the moment. So I should be happy, but been reading more brain stuff, as we all do on and off. And I'm shocked again at how ignorant we are about how our brains work. And the personal thing for me on this is, my philosophy is called liquid information. When I first talked about that, about how information should be so interactable, my father many, many years ago said, shouldn't information be frozen and secure? You shouldn't lose it, shouldn't be washed away. And it's taken me, decades to accept that, of course, he's completely right. So something that core to my own personal philosophy, now it's, both sides are important, but I really think that comes out in the whole visual meta thing. It's so frozen it can be printed, but yet we should do everything. So to me, it's not an aside issue, having it in the actual document. It is a little bit of understanding that to make it super interactive, we can't just do it for now. It has to be for the long term. I know you've all heard me say this many times, but over the weekend, it's been a bit coming back to me. Right. So yeah, I will talk particularly with Fabien about how to do some of that encoding. We'll do some tests, and then Andrew, when it's appropriate for you, you shouldn't need to do the basic stuff. So I'm moving the agenda just a little bit. Fabien, is your hand up for a comment, or because you're ready to talk about your aspect of things?
Both.
Okay, why don't you do comment first? And then I think it would be really good if we spend a minute or two in Andrew's world, all of us together, to see if there are any details to mention, and the rest of the time then today will be entirely hosted by you, Fabien. Is that cool? Cool. So what's your comment then, sir?
Two comments. Number one, regarding Mark's comment on bringing someone in VR. I've also done a couple of demos like this, where you have like the little green balloons and then the arrow, or the version where you're on desktop and you highlight on it. It's indeed the risk of this is if it becomes a clutch and then we justify terrible UI and UX by, hey, somebody's going to be there to take your hand. So that's not good. That being said, because no, we're not building a product, if it's done right and that the person who is there is at least as much there to help as to actually listen, then it could be good. The problem is we have to actually be there. Like, even if it's remotely, it's not always easy to do synchronous collaboration. And as we all know, sometimes we can have networking issues, etc. So even if we are able to, we don't manage. So it's not, I'm just saying it's not also a magical solution. Technically it's not trivial, but even like in terms of organization and the logistic, it's but I still think it would be good. That's why I showed a couple of prototypes on the topic. Now the other comment, yes, Frode, about your information being either liquid or static. I think I'm going to repeat a bit what I said on Monday. In my opinion, it's like the meme, why not both? I want the static file to be stored locally, and that is exactly the verbatim version that the author sent me or that I downloaded or whatnot. But it doesn't have to stop there. I can also want to play with the content and the data and everything that has been in it, and eventually using as literally a building block for my work. All this done with the proper provenance and referencing work. Say, hey, I get the data from that person, concept from that person. I mean, that's the whole point, in my opinion, of like standing on the shoulder of giants. Is you recompose the work of others. But for this, you need to be able to have access to their work, and having a flattened fixed version, it's just a pain and it's a waste of time. So why not both? Why not have a version that is unmodified, verbatim, downloaded and saved, so that even if the internet were to go down, we still have it as is, but the data itself that we can recompose with. I don't see that as exclusive. And to go a bit further, so one of the work I've done like last week and the week before now has been bringing files into VR again, like files and their content, and being able to manipulate them. And it's been initially like, oh, I can only bring like JPEG or PNG to, I can convert things from whatever to JPEG and PNG to, wow, sorry to swear, but shit, that is a lot of file. You can actually convert a ton of things to JPEG and PNG. So that makes actually for a vast amount of content. So it went from, I can't bring nothing to VR to what can I not bring in VR? So sadly, that's a little bit exaggerated, but still, it's coming. Like the shift, I think, is real. To the point where I was thinking today, and I posted it on Twitter, is I want to have supplementary materials brought to XR. Like if you write a paper, you will have the PDF, the verbatim copy of a version of it that's been done for publication. But depending, of course, on your field of study, but I guess if you're not writing pure philosophy, most likely you will have documents with different file formats and different content type and whatever that are useful for you. And those are arguably the supplementary materials. So I'm wondering, so basically my thought is I want to have the PDF and I want to have the supplementary materials also in XR so that I can play not just with the images of the PDF, but if there is code in it, then I want to execute that code. If there is like a data set, then I want to have my own literal view of it, like projected. So I'm wondering, and it's a question for all of you, are you aware of any convention or standard or any way to share supplementary material? And that is not, don't tell me a URL with a zip file on it, because
Fabien,
I don't think that's, yeah.
you've gone from comment into your section.
No, not yet.
No, but please pause that because that's a big question to us.
It is, but I think it's important.
I agree it's important, and that's why I think it should be paused because let's go through what Andrew has now, and then it's entirely onto that question in your presentation, because otherwise it goes a bit. Is that okay, or?
Yeah, okay. I thought, yeah. It
Okay.
was related. That's why I ask it now, though. It's not.
Yeah, it's just most of us are with headsets now, so that's why it's difficult to address it. So, Mark and Fabien, do you mind also going into Andrew World, because we haven't really done much. Peter, are you using a mouse in there? Are you using the controllers in Andrew World? I can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted, Peter.
No, I haven't tried the controllers in Android World yet.
Yeah, it's not really set up for that. But if we can all go into Andrew World now, and then because we haven't actually done a good level of usability testing together, so I think it would be really useful to talk through as we go there, because we have some inconsistencies that we need to decide what to do. Fabien, are you also coming in? Please.
Yes, I am, but I was trying to share the link, and what I usually use doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
I'll go on the futuretextlab.info website, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Let's see. What is the latest version of Android World?
Go to futuretextlab.info and you will find it. It's the top one. And
the live experience.
It might be worth you going in as well, Andrew. So you get to see it as we see it, even though, of course, you know it inside out. And Mark, are you putting on your headset?
Yeah, it's just rebooted on me. That's the only reason. I'll be there in a second.
I would like a screenshot of all of us with headsets. That doesn't happen every day.
Okay, I'm back in.
Okay, hang on a second. Okay, everybody look at the screen and look super cool. I'm doing a screenshot of us. 1, 2. Oh, so super cool.
Right, I blinked.
Okay, so on the futuretextlab.info, you click on the experiment things, and then it's current live XR, ACM hypertext 24. That's the one.
Okay, I'm inside of the sphere. I see the glowing rays moving around and crisscrossing.
Then you're not inside of the sphere. You have to click on the enter thing.
Yeah, I click the enter, and I'm inside of a sphere looking at its exterior with the...
No, is that possible?
What's the name of the URL? Is it like beta 10.22.24?
No,
yeah.
You go to futuretextlab.info.
Yeah.
Then you click on the bullet live XR experiences.
Yeah.
And then on top, current live ACM hypertext 24 proceedings.
That's the one, but it says beta 22.24.
Yeah, is that correct, Andrew? Andrew, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're talking.
It's like /Andrew.
Yeah, I was double checking.
Yeah,
it's
10.22.24.
10.22. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Peter, you're not going to get anything to work with controllers, so you're just going to be stuck on the loading screen.
Okay.
You're going to need the hands tracking, unfortunately.
I could hear the controllers dropping. Oh no, that wasn't.
I'm in.
All right. Okay, so we all click enter VR. Mine
Yes,
isn't working.
exit VR, get rid of the controllers, and then enter VR. Let's try that. Okay.
All right, so we should all now see ACM hypertext 24 in a column. Please tell me when you all see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you have it as well, Peter?
hang on. I just got rid of the controllers. Re-entering with hands. Okay, now I'm in. ACM Hypertext 2024, all papers, long papers, short
Yeah,
papers,
very good.
lectures, and workshops.
Very good. So the first thing we need to do is look at our right hand, and once we make a gun gesture, we all have the pointer, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone feel that there's anything wrong or good about that as the first thing?
No, a question which is not by way of critique, but is there any particular reason that the sort of the base of the laser starts just to the left of the hand?
Well, I have an associated question, Andrew, for when you. It is also very often I don't see a laser. I only see the dot, which I really like. But do you want to comment on the logic of the laser and the placement and all of that?
Well, the laser should be originating from kind of a halfway point between your two fingers, sort of vaguely, because that's the way most of the pointers work. Say like in the Quest OS. So we wanted it to be somewhat familiar. Uh, the line not always being visible. We went back and forth on that quite a bit. Originally, I had it always visible, and then there was a discussion about how it looked sort of gross to always have a line in your face. So we made it so that it's hidden by default, and if you haven't pointed to anything in a while, it shows up to kind of remind you, hey, you're pointing this direction. And then if you point at something, it goes away, assuming you know what you're doing. In the hand menu, you have pointer options, so you can tell the line to stay always off or stay always on, as well as the smart line, which is what we have it on by default. So we can make any of those the default if we would like, but that's the logic there.
So in the hand menu, on the left pointing finger, we have pointer beam, always on, smart assist, and always off. Thank you. By the way, I am recording this internally now. Okay, so I would agree with Mark. On my headset as well, the beam, when it does appear, is quite far to the left. It is not between my thumb and my pointy finger. It's to the left of my pointy finger.
If I turn and look at the back of my hand, it's halfway. So it may be a sort of. I get Andrew's point, and I hasten to add that it doesn't disturb me. It's like all these things, it's there for a reason. I just wonder why. I don't think it makes it any less difficult to use.
I know what you're talking about. If you try wiggling your thumb and index finger while the line's visible, you'll notice it doesn't move. It's sort of anchored in place. And that's because it's anchored to your wrist. It's much smoother that way. If it's actually being centered like like the Quest OS does, when you try to pinch, it actually shifts the line a bit, so you end up missing what you're trying to click on, which is infuriating. So the solution we came up with after some testing was aim it so it's sort of originating from halfway between the two, but anchor it to the wrist so pinching doesn't shift it. So it may be slightly further left or further right depending on your actual hand. Because you're not seeing your hand. That's just a default hand model. And then it's tracking your real hand.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so hopefully it doesn't really matter because once the line's visible, you see a clear point. But yeah, that's what's going on there.
Okay, so we're all happy with being able to drag this ACM Hypertext 2024 column and moving it anywhere, right? So that I think that interaction is very good, unless anyone has any comments. Now, let's go into posters because it's not too big. So when we do that, that's a tap to open the posters. But if we now tap on a paper, nothing happens. It has to be dragged on. So I'm just wondering about
How are you seeing posters in the 24? There shouldn't be any.
Oh, that's very odd. There is one, but not okay. Let's go short papers then. That's actually what was tapped. I made a mistake. Thank you.
Okay. I think posters is just it just lists the title that these are the posters, but then it's not generating.
No, that's fine. Okay, so
Uh,
now if we can all click on short papers and have a look at that, and that whole set of the column and the list of short papers we can easily move and so on. But is it clear to people that to open they need to drag it out? Obviously, that's core to our interaction. I'm just stepping back now.
So I have put people in without an explanation and they figured it out. I can't figure out how they figure it out because that doesn't seem very intuitive to me. Um, but once they do know, either by me telling them or them guessing, they quite like the drag. It's one of the I think it's the bit that gets the best reaction out of people, being able to drag a random title out and then it generates an abstract.
Yeah,
Something as simple as that, people go, "Whoa!" It's kind of funny.
yeah, that's cool. Okay, so let's drag out demonstrations of the future of text, our work. Let's drag it to the right, so we're looking at the same thing, please. Now,
Out of interest, Andrew, is the list all the papers? So if I'm trying to vertical scroll, the reason it isn't because I'm seeing everything.
Sorry, are you talking
So
about the all papers
I've
tab?
opened long papers,
Oh, okay.
and I'm assuming that they're ordered probably on their ACM ID numbers, which
Yeah,
annoy.
they're generating.
Sorry?
They generate in the order that the user put them in to the catalog. So
Okay.
I put them in by ID number.
Cool.
But
Yep.
that way it lets people kind of customize it themselves.
Yeah.
The only one that's sorted outside of user control would be by author because that's alphabetical.
Understood. How do I,
right.
and also, how do I get back out of I've managed to swap my hands and can't swap back, and I seem to be in debug mode because I've got weird sausage fingers.
Look
Yeah,
at
so the
your,
sausage fingers is actually not debug mode. That's a bug with the headset. It happens
Okay.
rather frequently. It means it lost tracking while you were in the experience. Put both your hands like behind your back so the
Yeah.
headset can't see them, and
Yep.
then bring your non-dominant hand forward so it can see it, and then bring your dominant hand, and it should swap them back.
Cool. What
Huh.
does and what does a little orange dot on the end of my pointing finger mean?
That would mean you're in the menu, the hand menu. So it's to point and select menu items.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that'll go away if you turn your non-dominant hand away from yourself.
I see it. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Understood.
okay, so let's all go to the short papers. Open that as a column. Hang on, I'm having, yeah, my hand has gone a bit funny. I'll do the behind me. Bring them back up. Still a bit weird. Okay, anyway, trying to point.
I have a lot of difficulties testing, but it has nothing to do with the setup. It's, I think, the operating system of the Quest is not really ready for the pen. So I'm losing my hands very often, and I need to actually reboot the headset to get them back. So it's extremely inefficient.
That's not good.
No.
Okay, yeah, everybody, please look at the short papers, okay?
Yep.
So we agree that it is nice and intuitive once you're told to drag and drop. So we're going to drag demonstrations on the future of text. We're going to drag it out to the right. Now, I have two questions and observations. One of them is the borders around all our boxes is very Tron-like because they're quite heavy. I'm wondering if we should make them 50% opacity or 50, just darker. What do you all think? Especially you, Andrew, who's been looking at this a lot.
I mean, I don't really have a preference. I've gotten used to the white boxes, so I think they're fine. But if it's like white lines everywhere, um, sure, we can change the shade, or I can even change the thickness of them,
I
whatever
mean,
you prefer.
I know I'm obviously the one who put them there design-wise, but they're beginning to feel a bit like chart junk. So yeah, I'm thinking maybe make them a little, yeah, make them thinner if you can, if that's a reasonable thing. Unless,
Yeah.
so
I think we also need to be careful to not just keep changing design just because it's old. Um, if it's an actual concern that we're running into, then absolutely we'll make adjustments. But I noticed that our design for the project changes every like month and a half essentially because what we've had we got used to and it's no longer interesting. So just
uh,
a potential thing to think about when we design stuff.
I don't fully, I understand it's not fun to make these changes, but for me, designing it, I need to feel it for a while and then adjust it. I mean, the amount of time I've adjusted the colors and author shall not be mentioned. But yeah, I would really appreciate it if you make the line a little thinner, but that would be a variable rather than lots of hand coding, right?
Yeah, that one's easy. I've things like shade, color palette, line width, that's all stuff that's just swap numbers out. That's easy.
Good,
Would you say
because
like half as thick or just sort of something?
half as thick and then throw it up and send us a link so we can quickly test it to see if it's ridiculous or not. Because we're getting close to the book, and that means screenshot, and that means freezing version 1 year. So it should look as
Mhm.
clear as possible.
Take a look at if you look at the abstract, there's a horizontal bar down near the bottom, right?
Yeah,
That's about half the width of the outline. Do you want those? Does that look fine for the outline width? That's the same width everywhere.
I think so. Anyone else disagree with that? Good. Okay, so
Okay, cool.
now
That's what I'll go with then.
fantastic. That was nice and simple. So then I have the first issue for me as a user is, and I don't know what you guys feel about this, but now I have on the right demonstrations of the future, blah, 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 all beautiful. On the left, I still have the short papers and the ACM hypertext. So I have two rectangles that are now currently kind of in the way. What I would really like is once you've dragged away a document into space, after a short period of time, that closes, the short papers or whatever closes, and we just have the ACM hypertext.
But you
Um,
can close it. You just tap it again.
you have to go to short papers,
Yeah.
and
But if it auto closes, then you might lose it. I know it's pretty normal for someone to be like, "Oh, this looks interesting. I'll grab that one," and they keep going through the list, right? But then if it auto closes while they're reading, that would be really annoying. So shouldn't that be a like intentional user choice?
well, that's my discussion. Exactly that.
I've
Um,
got one thought on the so while we've got the short papers open, because there are a few short papers, whereas on the long papers we just see a little bit of the ACM hypertext box at the side. Now I'm seeing the box behind that is in effect a sort of hierarchy. Because in other words, I put my cursor over it to bring it out. The thing is that when I'm not doing that, if I put my cursor across I'm just moving across the space, where intentionally I'm not attempting to interact with the ACM hypertext box, which in my mind's eye essentially is hidden, so to speak, behind the short papers. It's actually active. So in other words, I suppose what I'm saying is that it would sort of be helpful it, if the bit that's active of the background box is only the bit to the right of the short papers. So the bit above the top of short papers and the bit below of the ICM hypertext 24 is not reactive to the passage of the cursor across the space unless it's essentially been invoked. Does that make sense, Andrew?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if I agree. Um,
Okay.
because I could see it being like I understand the issue you're running into, and in ideal world, you'd have more papers, so we wouldn't run into that.
Mhm.
But this is a valid use case right here. Um, I would say there would also be users who would expect to be able to get that back by trying to point at it. And if it doesn't come back, they'll think everything's broken. They wouldn't think, oh, I need to point to the right side of it. Um, and I think this is tough because you're absolutely correct. There are users who would think just like you and be like, oh, this is annoying. But then there's also users who would think that it was broken if we make that change.
Yep.
And it's kind of a what's more important. And I would say I'd rather not have anyone think it's broken as opposed to someone being like, oh, it's showing up too much. It's kind of a lose-lose scenario.
I can live with that. I mean, I take all that on board. And in fact, funnily enough, it wasn't because I was somewhat angry. What actually happened was what it made me do is move my hand much higher or much lower, which of course I lost the hand tracking, and then I came back with a different hand in focus because I'm sitting down and there's a table sort of just in front of me. So in other words, in an attempt to not accidentally trigger the box. So that was actually my thinking rather than a sense of sort of visual outrage at the
Oh, that
design.
makes sense. That makes sense.
But I take your point entirely, and I don't think it's something to sort of lose sleep over at this point.
I
Okay.
see Peter has his hand up. I'm not sure if you guys can see him or not because of headsets.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention what I'm trying right now. I got the remote desktop from my Mac opened inside of Andrew's experience. So right now I'm actually inside the experience, but also looking at the desktop of my laptop in the Zoom room so I can see all of you guys in Zoom while also interacting with Andrew's experience live. That suggests that we might be able to actually use a regular desktop window to pop up some sort of a control panel or something to be used with Andrews, and then we could leverage all of our regular desktop user interface tools to build a 2D control pad that could be accessed using the remote desktop inside of the VR experience, as opposed to struggling to replicate the quality of 2D controls that we can create in a web browser inside of OpenXR. So that's something really worth playing with, just to have a look at it. I don't know, could we get a web application running inside the remote desktop or on a tablet, say, to be talking to the live XR experience?
So yes, but it's even easier than that. If you, instead of opening the remote desktop, if you just reopen the browser, you'll see the current page that you're now inside of, but it'll just be idle. You could put an interface there. And since it's the same page, you don't even have to send the code anywhere fancy. It's just talking to itself. This is what we're doing on my other WebXR project with Jeannie in her lab, where we're doing 3D model visualizations. We're just hijacking the browser for interface.
Oh, neat. Could you give us a demo of that next time, maybe?
Sure, yeah, it's still in development, but yeah, I can show stuff off.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
we have to, yeah, that's kind of another step, but we need to go through a few more things and then over to what Fabien has. Okay, so we now have ACM hypertext box on the left. We have demonstrations of the future of text in front of us. If you've done the same, so if we can now all please click on the plus to have the full document. This is the first user inconsistency. If we now point to the white document, we can scroll up and down, but we cannot move it. And in order to get to move it, because we all sit with desks, we have to move our hands in quite an awkward way to get to that bar underneath, something that we couldn't really know beforehand. So I'm wondering, conceptually, what do you all feel about maybe changing so that if you click, so to speak, on the white of the document, you move the document and you have to either use the table of contents or the scroll bar to move up and down, or something similar. Is there any strong feelings of this?
Something most people will know from using computers is generally there's some kind of a Windows generally have some kind of a grab across the top, and that's consistent across Windows and Mac. We have a control bar at the bottom, which is fine. Though I've got it to work now, but I did find no, it's working fine now. I would say my natural sense is no. When I'm in it, I wanted to, being able to scroll was the thing, because I've opened a document to see it. So when I'm seeing the document, what I want to do is interact with the document within it. I take Fred's point, but short of shifting the bar from the bottom to the top, I don't know really what you can do. I wouldn't want the movement control to be on a click within the textual window, because that's confusing. You now change the sort of point of what you're doing. You're now not interacting with the document, but you're interacting with the frame of the document, but you're doing it in the area that is the content of the frame.
That's fair enough to have that. Now, another inconsistency we have is we have table of contents on the left, but we have the little scroll triangle on the right. And that doesn't make sense. If you want to try to grab the scroll triangle, it's really, really hard because it's small. And of course, it spawns the references. So what I'm wondering is, should we maybe move the scroll triangle from the right to the left so it's the same side as the table of contents? What do people think about that?
Well, it doesn't really point to the table of contents, but we
I
could.
just mean if you point to the right of the document, you get the references. It's very
Right.
hard. It's very hard to grab the triangle scroller without spawning the references. And
I don't think many people will grab the triangle. It's the only reason why you can drag it is because the functionality still exists from back when it was a big scroll bar, and I was like, might as well keep it. If we want to make that more obvious, we can.
No, that's not really my point. My point is really the triangle refers to the inside of the document. So that's why I think maybe we should move it from the right side to the left, because that's where the table of contents is, which also refers to the inside of the document.
Oh, here's an idea. What if we actually had the triangle projecting in? So what if, instead of being a white triangle, what if the triangle was a black or a gray triangle that was flush at its right edge with the edge of the document pointing into the document?
Yeah, I was thinking about where to put it, and I think that's a good idea, if that's a reasonable, easy thing for you to do, Andrew.
Yeah, that's the notch that we had before, so I could
Yes.
put that back.
It would make sense because the triangle doesn't actually, it only alters the height of the window, not the width of it. If we're using
not
the
talking
idea just
about-
been mentioned, sorry?
We're not talking about that triangle. We're talking about the one sticking on the right-hand side that you point to see where you are in the document.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the grey one at the
Little
bottom right.
thumb.
No, we're not. We're talking about the white one sticking out on the right-hand side.
Yeah, which is what you used to scroll with, but that doesn't change the size of the window, which is what I thought we were talking about.
No. What we're talking about
No, we're
is
talking about scrolling.
the inconsistency with if you mouse over to the right of the document, you get the references, which is great. If you go on the left, you have the table of contents. So that's why I feel maybe the triangle should not be on the right-hand side, it should be on the left-hand side. So it relates to inside the document. And
Okay,
as Peter was saying, okay, so yeah, I agree. Not to spend too much time on it. Andrew, if you put the notch back on the left, but not as a notch, if it make it a small triangle that's the same color as the background, that might look really nice. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
Just to clarify, it won't actually be a cut because we can't do that. It'll be just a gray triangle. So if you move the document over other documents or text, you'll see the gray triangle. So it won't actually be a hole.
That's
As long as
fine.
we're fine with that.
That's fine. And I think it should be about 20% smaller, just a little bit smaller than it is now.
I've got an observation. It's to do with the white lines at the side. I've deliberately gone into another document only because the one we're looking at only has one heading, which doesn't really help. But it's sort of useful. When you point onto it, the line goes down. I would find it useful to be persistent because then I'd know the left-hand bar is telling me how many structural headings there are on the document, and the right-hand bar would tell me how many references there are. So if it's a tiny right-hand reference on the right-hand side, a tiny bar on the side, I know there are next to no references. If it's basically all the way down in the document, I know it's rammed full. It's just a minor thing, but if it's not difficult to do, it's the kind of thing that's really useful because you're now getting a meaningful impromptu within the environment.
Yeah, that's actually the way I had it before.
Oh, right.
And it was requested to be changed. I can, in theory, swap it back. It would take a good amount of work now because
So
once
what
we
do we
added the
get?
references, we built it back on. But
Sorry, I forgot. So what was it? What was the rationale for changing it? Because we've now got two
I think
lines
just
that do nothing.
I think it was just visual consistency.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
completely sure what I just followed the instruction.
Okay, at
Yeah,
this
sure,
point, okay, I can answer that. At this point, if it's anything other than minimal work, we're not going to do it anyway, obviously. But when you look at the left, when it goes to the description, which is the only item here of the table of contents, the line goes to the size of that, which is great, and to the references. So it does scale on a mouse over to give a good idea. But when you're reading the document, if you have the lines on the left of different sizes, I think that just feels off.
Okay, well, if to explain what that misses is, let's say I've now got 3 documents.
I understand. If
Yeah.
it's long, it's got more. I
No,
get
no,
it.
no. Yeah, the point being that where it has relevance is where, especially if you have several documents, because you now have visible, actionable, meaningful feedback from the UI that you don't get from the full height white bars.
Yeah. Okay, but okay. So we can't do that now, but we do have
Sure.
there is one issue before we go to Fabien. I think we're about done. Um, yeah, but first of all, the coloring, when you touch a reference on the right that goes black around it, um, it goes kind of dark green or dark brown. What was the logic for doing that? Is that part of the annotation that
Are you
didn't?
talking about the quick tap when you're
Yes.
highlighting yeah, that's just the highlight.
Why do we want it highlighted?
Um, because Dini wants highlights and we
Okay.
had it in the old version. And
No, that's good enough answer. Absolutely. The only
I
thing,
know in the past, like in your design we had highlight as it was called mark, right? It was a menu item that shows up when you drag out the item, but it's I don't know, kind of out of place. So we just kept an interaction we already had. The reason
no,
why it's dark is because our text is white now, so I can't use light highlight colors because then the text just disappears. So it's just the same colors, just now shaded dark.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But okay, on the final bit, for my end at least, to use the gun gesture to point down, do you think we can modify it somehow so it's easier to grab? Because and also it's easy to kind of undershoot and overshoot, and the cursor goes away. With the with
There's
the
not much we can do about that with the current gestures. Um, we could come up with a new type of gestures. What are you considering?
Oh, I'm not. It was a small point. But anyway, I think those few small issues would be really, really good to do. We don't need to go further. I think it looks fantastic. Any final comments on that before we
Just
move?
I've frozen it, but a very quick one. I don't need the headset for that. It's a quick one for Andrew, which is, and I don't know if this is impossible, but one thing I sort of noticed doing this is that I wouldn't want it to auto change, but I would, if it's possible, to be able to essentially say that I now want to put the thing that I'm pointing at to be effectively the north position radially around me, because I'm sitting in 2 environments. I'm sitting at my desk. I could just move around and look at the thing that's over there, but I'm now conscious that actually that's sort of, in a sense, on this axis, true north for me, and it's off there. The thing being, I wouldn't want it to auto do it, because the reason you might want to do it is that, okay, now I'm zeroing on the things that are really interesting. What I want to do is I want them to have them sit in the center of my environment. And I still want the index, but I'm happy with it to be off the side, because, and I know where it is and I know why I put it over there, rather than it zoom about, because I've sort of essentially got an automation in there that says I better get out of the way. Does that make sense?
All right, so I think so.
Yep.
So say you start the space looking this direction.
Yep.
So here's where the menu appears.
Yep.
That's north or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, in front of
You
you.
drag something over here and you're like, I want that to be north now. So you select that, the whole
Yeah.
space spins, so now
Yep.
it's there, and you have to go back here. The item you were looking at is now here instead.
Yeah, essentially I mean, another way of putting it, so probably north was a wrong analogy. But what I was getting at is, you're just saying, what I want you to do is I want to take the thing that, because you start with the index in the front, anything you drag out is now not in front of you. The point being, what you're saying is, okay, now all the really interesting stuff I want to work on is now not in front of me.
Oh, I see.
Rather than me rotate, I would actually like it in front of me, and the stuff I don't need instantly is then pushes around to the side.
Okay, I'm trying to think of how to do that.
Well,
What I always do, because I
We'll
realize
talk about
that's
it.
correct. What I
Tagging
do
this
when
is
I
a
enter
rabbit
this-
hole, so don't feel
right.
don't feel obliged to plunge down it.
Are we
Because I do the
thinking
same
about
thing.
the
I move the menu off to the side and then I spawn stuff as soon as I get in there. So I understand what you're saying.
Are we talking about some kind of a recentering mechanism?
Pretty much.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I
Fabien.
don't, I don't want to.
Don't
We're
fall.
waiting for Fabien's demo, so I don't want to drag everyone.
Let's move on. Andrew, too many little details were added to your workload there, but at least not too many. Fabien, please go ahead. Sorry,
Yep.
that took longer than expected.
No worries. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Unfortunately, yes, we are on it. Oh, that's better.
So basically, you, Frode, also made a remark about this, but initially the file, so you have the files and the file content, namely, for example, post-it notes or images all around. And there was the list of files there, like the file names. But we had discussion about icons, and basically now you have icons. So all this, I'll show you a little video that I recorded a bit earlier. Voilà. So that's on my desk. And I can grab, now they have some highlights, and when I drop them, they snap back to the desk, basically. And they're actual files, they're not representation of like I don't know, they're the actual files. It's because the same way we could drag and drop files, now they have a visual representation of not the file name. We can still see the file name there, know the content, but rather like an icon, and it could be, of course, with different colors for file types and all this. But yeah, icons is the point. Does it make sense?
Very much.
Yeah. Cool. It works in the in XR, like in AR there and pass through. And what you were seeing before, so that's the VR version. And also, just for the not anecdote, but for if you have Chrome as a browser and you add the WebXR, I think emulator. And here, if I click on AR, then I can grab the headset and go around, click on the headset. It's not something I developed. It's just to show you a different way to experience it when you want to show to someone you want to experience. And then here, you can see it's not perfect. It's a little bit tricky. And as I was saying before, grabbing the hands, I'll stay polite, but it's very challenging. And here I'll try to grab one and move it. Yeah, and of course.
In this browser, could we run Andrew's world and then take screenshots like this?
Yes. So it's Chrome. I'll put a link, and then it's the WebXR, I think emulator, or I forgot its actual name. And then you have different options, basically. So you can switch, for example, to controllers. And here you can see, instead of having my hand, I have a controller. Because in my experience, I can switch back and forth. Okay, so that was the first part, the icons. And like I said, now, when you grab them, you have a visual highlight. When you drop them, they snap back to this large rectangle, which is basically the desk, the virtual desk. Now, to remind people a bit, so that's the place. If I go in my directory, I forgot, but let's say I'll take a PDF there and I'll copy it here and I'll do October. So in the backend, in the companion, it converted it, and then you have a viewer, and you can get to the next page, see images on top, etc.
Fabien, what is the window top left? Is that relevant to this?
Which one? The one there on the left?
Fabien Benetou sent you this request.
Yes. Yes, we can do actually a little game. I don't think I should do this, but here you can put in the chat. Please go in the chat and upload a file. And I'm not going to do anything, so this way I can be a bit lazy. Upload whatever file you want. Obviously, don't upload a 5 terabyte video. Basically, the smaller the file, the faster we should see something. In case it doesn't work, no, let's you guys have a minute to grab a file and we'll see what happens. And I'll put the little debug here to explain a bit what's happening behind the scene. And it's specifically because I want to collaborate with people, not just my files on my desktop, but I have in mind, of course, the demonstration at the symposium. The hope being, and it's something that we repeated countless times, bringing real files that people, it's meaningful for them. For example, this article, maybe nobody here, I think it's on topic, but let's imagine that nobody would care about it. If you were to bring your own files, then you would get more interested, let's say, potentially to the research.
Absolutely. I've added a file through your Dropbox. I misunderstood first and did it in the chat, but now it's in the Dropbox. It's got the glamorous name of something PNG.
And look, do you see my hands? I'm not touching my computer. And do you see my screen? So you see my webcam and my screen?
We believe you.
But the point is, there is, I don't know which of you added the Morse photo, but it's there.
I couldn't possibly guess who that would be.
So the point here is I'm basically just extending the past work instead of drag and dropping from my desktop. This link would work for Google Drive or whatever other drives. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's supported by the underlying library. So I'll also try to do a little demo there to make it more obvious, maybe. So I upload. Yeah. So you people keep on uploading. That works well.
Where's my big picture?
So there is. I never considered having lots of people doing it at the same time. So if people did it at literally the same time, one won, let's say, the race. Same here. But it's okay. You see that some of that content is not me and has arrived there. It can be manipulated then, and it would also appear there on the virtual desktop. So the point being that we can bring content with a companion app with remote drives, so basically online content. And I think in the pursuit of showing content that are for other more interesting than whatever people will decide. So for example, if somebody the day before the symposium had read an interesting article and they want to bring in, if they have it on their phone, the laptop, whatever, they can do it. We just have to give them a URL. Voila. What I will explain a tiny bit how it works under the hood, especially for Andrew, but everyone. So what I did so far was monitor this directory, a specific directory, for any file system change. If there is a new file system detected, a change, like a new file, I try to convert it to JPEG or whatever, and then it cascades. So again, if I get, let's say, a format, let's say ODP, it's going to transform to PDF, and then from PDF, it's transformed to imaging. So as long as one file format is supported in the end and another at the beginning, if there are like 5 transformations in the middle, I don't really care, it's going to happen. And it's based on server-side events. So the client just has to wait. It's not like, it doesn't cost much. It's just, it appears when it's ready, let's say. And what I did now is there is a tool called OrClone. And that's the magic, let's say, between remote file content. It has a lot of different backends, and one of the backend is Dropbox. So whenever there is a change on that Dropbox, then I synchronize it. So I copy the file from the Dropbox remote directory to my local one. I sanitize, let's say, the file name so that people don't try to hack away. And then it goes back to my normal way to handle the file system and then doing the conversions. And then it appears there in XOR, the usual environment where you can manipulate and then move them around and eventually do more. Voilà.
Yeah, what do you mean, voila? That was super cool. All right, so now, okay, I'm just going to ask some questions, Andrew and Fabien. Could this somehow be what we sometimes call library level of what Andrew is doing?
Just so that I don't answer off, the library level of what Andrew is doing is what?
So the idea, okay, so what Andrew currently has is a brilliant viewer of one document with several articles, one journal with papers, or however we choose to word it, but it's one thing with subsections. What we need is a way to go up, to have several of these. We want to have the ACM, we want to have future text, volume 5, and etc., that kind of stuff. So conceptually, at least, I would really like to put on my headset and I have all these things, just like you showed. Pop one open, and then we're inside the view we just did earlier with Andrew.
Well, so for example, yes, I want to say yes, because here I'm converting to PNG, JPEG, whatever. If Andrew has as a file format for the library, whatever, JSON or something, and I don't know how it's converted, but basically the same principle. So I don't know what that format is. I imagine it's not like the raw PDF. I imagine there were some steps.
Okay, I have a related question because Mark moved his head. Behind Mark is Ted's book, Computer Lib, which several of us have high resolution scans on. What do you all think about the idea of a legacy book like that, which is not even text, it's basically images, right? Of being able to take that into what you just showed, Fabien, and it opens up as images, but they have some nice default views. So you can have a 2-page view of that and keep going through, etc.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember if I've shown it, but I do have a 2-page view with the curve of the page. Did I show this?
You have, yes.
Okay, so this for sure, no problem. Also, I use terrible resolution because it makes the demos faster. When I show you things, it's blurry and all, but it's not going to waste time on this. It could be much higher resolution. One thing that I have shown you, I think last time, and I'm not going to reshare my screen. I'm going to try, but that usually doesn't work. So let's see. Let me know if you can see my screen. I'm just sticking to your faces for now.
It says you've started sharing. It hasn't started sharing yet.
It doesn't work. And I don't want to refresh. Don't want to waste time. But basically, there are two file formats that I've added. So it's just a convention. They're not official. It's what I find useful. It's called .layout.json. And if basically you have an ID, let's say a file name, and you say this document or the output of the document is on that position, is going to put it there. So if you put the XYZ coordinate for the document, so you can save it. And if it's, for example, live.layout.json, you can save on top of it and it's going to reposition it. So for example, you display initially the pages from that book. Let's say a dozen pages just to start. Then you move them around, whatever you want, however you want, either by hand or on the desktop. And then you save their position in a .layout.json file. And then when you refresh the page, if that file is called default.layout.json, then it's going to reposition them wherever you put them last. So I think with that kind of scheme, it would work to do what you described.
That's fantastic.
Oh, wait, actually, I have something related to this that I need to refresh to actually show you guys. Just a minute, please.
While that's happening, the refresh there, Andrew, what is your current thinking of showing the book next to the hypertext conference? How do you currently envision the notion of seeing both of them at the same time? Or
Well,
choosing?
we hadn't talked about seeing them both at the same time. So I had
No,
envisioned
not
just
seeing.
swapping them out. But
Yeah,
if you
but
want them both active at the same time,
no, not active, but seeing two
okay.
things that represents them, so you can choose which one. The library view
Or like before you enter XR or when you're in XR.
in XR,
Uh,
ideally.
Okay, well, we'd need a design for that then. Um, but then all it would do is just clear the space, or no, it wouldn't even need to clear the space. It would just clear the menu and then load the new menu. So you'd
So
have to do some design changes, but
okay,
I guess that would be how that would work.
so in a way, then, in what Fabien has just showed us, one of those icon documents, for the sake of at least now, could contain only a link, Andrew, to your view plus one set of data, right? Because this is why you're working on the save state. So if in what Fabien showed, he has one that is ACM hypertext, one that's future of text 5, and it's basically just that you open up. Maybe you have some preview images, I don't know, but for the sake of argument, you want to open that. It goes to the server and finds your view of the book or of the proceedings. Could be done, right?
Well, I mean, I was just gonna have, I got a little bit lost there on your explanation. So I was just gonna have you put the hash link up top, and that routes to wherever you've saved your JSON catalog. And that would then load in your space. So we'd of course have our own created for the demos, but then users could in theory create their own as long as they have their server set up to allow the reading of files like that.
Fantastic. So that means that for our Future of Text Day, what we can have is the Fabien desktop, several amazing things. One of them is a nice little icon with ACM or whatever. The user clicks on that, so to speak, and that is just a link to the hash that you said. It opens what you have. Users enter, do all kinds of fun things. They go out of that back to Fabien world. Another one is basically two things. One, it can open up as a layout, the preview images. And there is a mechanism whereby that can then be clicked on to go into that version in Andrew World, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have links end up controlling all my stuff. So yeah, you just as long as you can put a link somewhere, you'll be able to swap between different catalogs.
So
I
this,
wasn't envisioning a way to have my space with multiple of same catalog inside of it though. Like I
no,
wasn't
no,
picturing
no,
that.
no, no, that's the library. We talked about it many months ago, and that's currently not a thing. So,
Okay.
in the
All right.
future, we'll have to do that. Okay, so Fabien, you asked for the layout of the room we're going to do the demo. So, does that mean that using what you have, people put their headset on, and in an AR view, they look around the room, and on one wall there is a big preview of the ACM, and next to it, or wherever, is a big preview of our book. They choose to kind of click on it, and boom, they're in those underworlds.
Yes, it could be. It still has to be done. I mean, the actual content, for example, namely the pages and the location, which is what I want to show you next, like in terms of what might help scaffold there. But yes, it's interesting what the discussion you just had with Andrew, because for example, on Linux at least, but I think on other operating system too, there is a support for .url files. And I don't have that yet, but that would be trivial. I do a location equal and the content of that .url file, basically. And then if that's a full URL with an hash or whatever Andrew used, then it would open the experience with the right configuration or setup. Let's say if it's in front of that document or part of a document or whatever with the viewpoint. So I will implement that next, like support for .url file. And then it means if you give me a dozen type of or a couple of URLs that will do. Initially, like I told you though, if they are not hosted on the same server, it will pop out the user out of VR. They will still be in the headset, of course, but I mean, they're going to leave the browser immersive mode. If though we synchronize or coordinate ourselves a bit before the event and they're hosted on the same server, then that back and forth will not force them to click again on enter VR. Now, in terms of doing the room setup, so let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes. Success.
Yep.
Still don't
It
have any of
works.
my pictures in there. I feel so bad.
Yeah, no need to make jokes on that. So what I started to do, it's a kind of world builder. So I drag and drop some 2D models, but they are actually 3D models. Here it's going to fill up those lines and here those columns, and I can apply sometimes some modifiers and fill the floor, and I can drag and drop a couple more elements here. And here I'll take the JSON file. I will show you the result here. I'll keep that one on top. I save above. And voila. If I step back, so it's a bit big, I'll zoom out, a bit easier to see. But here I made that little 3D world in that, and the files are still there, like the whole typical thing. So my point is, and I think it's not super intuitive, but you saw it took a couple of seconds, I want to say a minute at most, to go from the empty space to that 3D world. And just for the sake of it, I'll just add something else there. I will bring it back, save it, and voila, you get the new content there. So it's a kind of little level editor or level design for games, except here, the point is not a game. If we had other assets that are a bit more serious, we could do it. And one quote-unquote serious asset would be here. Instead of having this, we have like a PDF holder or a document holder. So we put the room of with the right scale, the right dimension. We put the room of the conference, and then what we would do is set up the room virtually for what it would be if we were to be at the conference with, again, the PDF there, the readers and viewers instead of just 3D models. So imagine here another asset, and that asset is book holder, or here the file system view, for example, the icons.
All right, Fabien, questions. I'm sorry, it's too exciting. Yeah. First of all, AR does not work in XR on the Vision Pro currently, right? Correct. Right. Okay. So that's fine. This is all based on the Quest. The fact that, let me just say something very naive, but I think it's important. The fact that once you have your headset on, you can be in a normal web browser, look at the normal web, then you can spawn a VR or AR experience, and from that you can have a link to another AR or VR experience. So you leave your immersion and you go back into the immersion. That is really, really important, right? Because it means that even in this, we can integrate a lot without all the code having to be one big chunk. So addressability, of course, is key, right?
Yeah. Right, and I think it's indeed important, first, because no offense to Andrew or any of you, it's just like, for example, it would be insane to even consider merging two code base like this a couple of weeks before the event.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, just literally insane. And in terms of momentum, I don't even think it's a good idea. But we did the big bet of betting on the web. So we can really have URLs, proper ones, either with pointing to JSON or again anchors and whatnot. So I think loosely coupled is powerful, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why when you started to discuss with Andrew about how this and this, and I started about the .url, that is a cool thing, and I think it's not used a lot. So, yeah.
Big question. I could imagine someone puts on the headset, they're in AR mode, and as we talked about, something here, something there. Now, an additional wrinkle, is it feasible, is to have on one of the walls a map from author, basically, right? So you have all those items on the wall, lots of things, could be moved or not, that's secondarily. But the point is that if one of them is a concept and you click on it to see the definition and there's a link,
Yeah.
then if the resolving part of that is in the room virtually, can it then point to it?
So what is trivial to do is to tell the browser whether you're in immersive mode or not, doesn't matter, follow that URL. Like I said, it's literally location equal and then the string that say HTTP, whatever. What is not trivial, namely, I don't think it's possible, well, I'm sure it's not possible, basically, is in immersive mode in XR to pop up like a window or a tab and then browse through it or whatnot. So you can fetch the content. Let's say if there is an image or JSON or something, but it's one or the other. Like either you follow a URL and that probably pops you out of your experience, or you get the content of that URL, but there is nothing in between, as far as I know.
Okay, so we're starting with Peter's memory palace, which I think a rectangular meeting room is very well suited for. We can discuss it a little bit more, Fabien, of what you would like to put on the walls, what we would like, say, what we want to do.
So I just very briefly, what I want is, again, for people that are present at the conference, so this kind of people, you know the list better than I do, not just to get excited, like it's pleasant, but I don't really care. What I want is that they are excited and give us quality feedback. That's what I want, that through the discussion at the symposium, it's like, not just do this, do that, change that color or this, but what if we were to, and then they think about something that we've never ever considered. And that thing is like, I don't know, generally helping researchers that are focusing on the domain that we're working on. So what kind of content and how to display it? To me, the one single goal is there. How the content that will be displayed will help people there say, hey, amazing or not good, or I don't care. But what about this feature? That's the only thing I care. Because now it's hard to tell, oh, this will be easy to display or not. It's a bit tricky. So yeah.
Okay, so more questions for you. Reasonably, we could take an entire wall and make it a map, right? Literally a map of the world, kind of a map, like a huge image.
Yes, we can display a big image.
Yeah. So that may be very, very useful, and also a timeline. Just the whole mural stuff. There's two types of murals, of course. One AR, you walk around it, and then there's the one where you use your hand to move the whole thing. We could maybe do something quite impressive there. It's really basic, but to be able to stand in a room and walk around and have, basically screens all around is powerful. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could put some lines on the floor to lead from one exhibit to another, virtually superimpose over sort of like in some museums, they'll have, follow the white line if you want to follow this path through the displays, follow the blue line for a different kind of presentation. To make some use of the floor.
Yes.
That's very, sorry, Fabien, you comment.
No, just yes, we can display lines, no problem. We can display arrows and we can do it step by step. We can do it also like just show that line if the person has reached that point in space. But that's And I think it's a good idea. The thing is, we have to consider how much of it is like the room need for this to work. The room need to be like it cannot change. If there is like suddenly a video projector in the middle, or somebody who comes with their dogs and whatnot, and then it fucks up the entire exhibit, then it's tricky. So as long as the room or some of the space in that room is generally exclusively dedicated to the demo, I think it might be a good idea. Also, in order to do this, it needs a bit of space, because if you like make a bet that the person is going to be plus minus, for example, 50 centimeters is realistic, 10 centimeters is not. So it means in order to distinguish from one spot to another, say go here or there, it's can be a bit tricky, but feasible for sure.
So the book as it stands now, there's a few pictures, most of it's text. I mean, we've gone through over the year all kinds of different things. I mean, like Adam did this where you read a book and it moves with your head, right? So if you lie back, the book is here, you know, it's not static in the room, all these types of things. And Mark here posted in the chat Ted Nelson style citation links, which if you're working within a very specific corpus, I can see it being useful, but not in general. I'm just looking at it here.
I mean, I'd agree. I mean, I always sort of thought that, you know, it was all really cool, but it scaled really badly. And I made some bigger, that was the night before I did my conference presentation back 2017. And the reason I say to check it is, oddly, whoever runs Permapub turns it on occasionally. So you can, yeah. Oh, binary. You can actually see it occasionally. But I don't know. You know, the thing is, of course, Ted was doing all his things when they had to really be imagined, and I don't blame him for that. But I don't actually think these links in that form would just be, you hit this thing where there are just too many damn lines.
Yeah. So here's a question and about our actual book and about actual reading it. One thing, the reason I want the articles done ASAP is, and that means you, Peter.
Yeah, working away on.
Thank you. Is we're going to have all kinds of AI extractions for our experimentations. You know, there'll be summaries, keyword, the kind of stuff we talked about for months and months. So it'll be very, very interesting to try to put clusters of these things into our headsets so we can view the shape of the book in many different ways. I'm not sure, Fabien, if that relates to what you're working on now, but you know, the way we have keywords and yeah, just thinking. Well, Fabien, just from your perspective, the way things are now, how would you really want to show off the book?
So last time when you mentioned the book, I think it was Monday, my first question was like data about the book, namely how many chapters, how many pages, etc. Because if the book is 1,000 pages, like for example, inconceivable to show it like straight up in the headset.
It won't be that big.
Right. But just what I'm trying to hint at is that the shape of the book changes how we can try to show it. And I was asking earlier, like, what about supporting materials? If everybody is making single pages or dozen pages, and if nobody has code or none of that code has been not highlighted as code, let's say, then it's sad, let's say, but we need to be pragmatic. We can't use that either. If also same, like how many images, etc. So it's a bit more of a design job in terms of what can be shown. My initial reaction now is so when I drag and drop a PDF on the companion directory, you see if it's small, actually you did not see, but it just like blast all the pages. If it's big, more than 10 pages, it make a viewer, which is basically just the first page and then two little pieces of code / text here that say next page, previous page, clone a page, so that you can grab a page out of it and then position it wherever you want, kind of murder rule thing. So then what I have in mind is like a dozen viewer, one viewer per chapter, if there is 10 chapters, and then they are roughly organized in space, and then people can walk or go next to one of the viewer for that chapter and then go to the other one, eventually extract pages or add post-its or something. But basically one viewer per chapter. If the chapters, though, there is a deeper hierarchy, for example, that they are organized by theme, and then there are 10 pages on WebXR, 10 pages on file format, chapters rather on whatever. Then we group them a little bit, like this wall will be dedicated to web technology. This wall will be dedicated to the philosophy of life. I don't know. So that's how I can relatively easily envision it for the time frame we have.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. One thing, as I think I mentioned, I'm trying to write a short article called Two-Page Spread Extended. And part of the premise of that is we need all these interactions and rich views, but then you should be able to, ideally, snap your fingers and now you have a nice 2-page spread of what you're reading. So it's pleasant in front of you, not too big. But yes, it is the various extracted data. And also, because we have a Gemini notebook, I have all the previous books. So I go through the different articles saying, how does this relate to previous work? So we can have different kinds of links to, I could imagine we could have the first 4 books on the wall in the background, just as book covers. But the new articles could point to them if there is a relevance, like, yes, Mark Anderson talked about this on this page. I'm not saying we can implement a way to necessarily open that page, but, getting somewhere to the shape of these things.
So the viewer for now is like one flat page in front of you, but like I shown before, you can also have 2 curved page face to face. So I haven't done it, but one can imagine changing the shape of each viewer. Say, I prefer this the format you described. Also, as we discussed earlier today, the layout itself is just a file. So if we have one web-based here, another philosophy of life there, and somebody doesn't like it, first, they can manually move them around. But second, we can have multiple layouts so that if somebody has a totally different view, which is, I want the chapter by chronological order or something else, another layout. So we can switch the layout of the viewers for, I don't want to say for free, but as long as somebody has designed different layouts and save them in that format, then we can swap them at convenience. The user, while being there, can swap them. We can imagine, for example, we see behind marks the different books, and you click a button and they're organized by color, they're organized by date, they're organized by whatever, so it doesn't matter.
Hang on. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is Harold Thimbleby, my teacher for when I got my master's. It looks very simple. Okay, he hasn't done this, but he actually formatted it in Author, which I'm grateful for. It is very non-visual, but we do have the references as a separate list, of course. Let me just export this now. My computer is very busy doing image backups. So this is as boring as it is, except it has these extra bits. That's all we have right now. But I do think that what you made me do, Fabien, a long time ago, was to take the 2-page spreads on a wall. Have a quick way to go through them was actually quite useful. What I am going to do on this one, as I've done on the other ones, I'm going to highlight a few things. Not like that, but in bold or something. just sorry, annotate, make it that color. Yeah, don't look at this. That's confidential page there. The new M4.
So also to clarify, I think because I've shown to an intern yesterday VR. They never tried VR. It's the first time they tried it. They tried it. They were blown away. Like, wow, shit, this is okay. They were really confused in a positive way. But then they asked me also, but like, would you read text in there? And I was like, no, I'm not going to read the book or even a chapter of the book in the headset. And I think it's something that is important to potentially remind people is like, I don't think, at least I'm not selling reading in the headset. I'm selling organizing files or your mind or representation of files, like bits of knowledge basically in the headset. And they happen also to be chapters of books, but it's more like which chapter you're going to read next, which chapter you're going to skip because it's just not your interest at the moment, which two chapter do you think relate, and thus you should read that one before the previous one. To me, that's the outcome. That's what I imagine somebody who would try it at the symposium would want to get out of. But if it's like, oh, I'm not going to read in there, it's like, yeah, me neither. I never like read a whole thing in it. So I think it's my point is, if we try to make the reading experience itself better in the headset, I think we're setting ourselves up for something that is going to be unpleasant for everybody involved. And I understand like the logic of, yeah, but headset will keep on improving and resolution and all this. Right, and then we'll be ready for it then. But like it can be useful right now, and we don't have to. Some people just love to read on their either iPad or printed paper or whatnot, and I don't think fighting for this is something that we can win. And I don't think it even makes sense. Huh? So.
I'm not worried about that, Fabien, because reading a two-page spread in the Vision Pro is nice. It's not as nice as paper, but it already is nice. As long as it's good resolution, two-page spread, it's fine. Of course, the key, hang on. The key is, of course, exactly what you're saying, how things connect. So we agree. I'm just saying the reading bit, it's neither something to enhance or it's just that, whatever it is. I see your hand mark, just briefly. So what I've done here, I uploaded a new paper and I asked the question up here, how does this paper relate to the other documents, the other books? Is there something someone else has written on this topic? And if so, where? I think this is where it's beginning to get useful, right? And it actually shows us where these things are in the earlier books.
If you give me a JSON file with the target and source, and you vouch for the quality of that content, then I can visually highlight the relationship between the two different chapters in the present book.
See, here it found that bit that relates in that way. So I just think what you're talking about in terms of letting, if I paraphrase you correctly to see if I understand you correctly, the point is to help people go through the volume of text to find out what to read. If they read an XR, fine, but we expect them to read it outside. But at least this helps them find it.
They're not sorry, but they're not going to read in XR. You're the only person, maybe with Brendel, who reads more than a couple of pages in their headset, and I mean literal couple of pages. So it's not something to fight for. Like, why do we even care about this? It might happen some days, but I bet there is maybe another person in the whole set of participants coming to the event that are going to be excited by the reading itself, just because so many people are very peculiar in the way they read. I don't mean this it's just an intimate thing, especially for knowledge worker. And they might read on a couch, outside, naked on the balcony for like here. It's something that is precious or intense. They might have a specific color of what's the name? Highlighter. Like it's not yellow, it's yellowish. I don't know. And I think going against that, I don't see it happening. So I don't think reading itself.
Fabien, you're wasting a lot of time to say that you and I completely agree, because
okay.
all I'm saying is that, like right now, I'm reading 2-page spread, ACM document. It's absolutely fine. It is not.
No, you're not. Sorry, you're not reading it.
No, hang on.
You're looking at it. You're not reading it.
Hang on. I have read it before. Please let me just complete this, because I do think we agree. It is actually fine. It is high quality. It's easy on the eyes. But no, would I want to go through and read lots of pages like this? No. But my argument is that I completely agree with you. The benefit of XR is not the reading of the page of the text. It is to going through large volumes and pieces, seeing connections, seeing what's there, finding. So we completely agree. All I'm saying is the reading bit, if they want to stay, fine. But that is not the primary interaction that we're working on. So we do agree. Mark, quickly, change the subject.
Well, I was just going to say, usefully, I think we might have seen something that actually bridges the backlink. I mean, I agree with the general point that the main thing you're going to be doing is doing light consumption of text to understand its relevance to the stuff you want to read or not. And definitely the stuff you've read, the stuff you either read before or the stuff whose provenance or whose context you understand, it'll be easy to do. So in other words, the idea that you might take some proceedings, well, okay, you know it's about this subject, there'll be a range of things, you may know some other people, but you can skim through that to get the point, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
so the question, so the reason I raised my hand was thinking about what Fabien demoed earlier, is can we go the other way through the rabbit hole? In other words, to take your very valid point, so you're reading this to look at to basically find the stuff you then want to read in your comfortable reading environment.
Yes.
I think that is. I mean, that builds massively on what you've just said, and I do think that is pushing on an open door. I think that's going to be far more useful than worrying about the overall reading experience, because you say we'll do it so little that we don't get much for it.
Okay. Yes, but there is a little but. Next year we'll be working on authoring. And it seems that one of the things about authoring will be, we still might, if we actually type, we're not going to type a lot, but if we do, that'll be a little thing. All the annotations, all our documents in the space will be part of the magic, right? I refer to this, I move this about, all of that stuff. So the actual reading thing, the little rectangle for reading and writing, I think is important, but we all agree it is not the secret sauce. Peter, I think we agree.
What I could say would be displaying tables of contents and references, but letting the computer read the text to me instead of trying to read it on the screen. And then the quality of the resolution of text wouldn't matter so much. I could just have it, read me section 1. And if I could do a selection where when I hear something, I figure how much time it would take me to react to it, so that if 3 seconds after something said, I start selecting, it would apply to what had been said, my reaction time before I started the selection. And then when I stop it, it would apply to the appropriate spot, so that I could do an audio selection while I'm listening to them and have it pick the appropriate chunk of text that I meant it to be, even though it's going to take me a little while to react having heard it before I can click the buttons.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, we're not going to look at integrating speech at this point, but yes, Fabien.
I think I forgot. So, one thing that I think relatively trivially do, I want to say, at least I think I can do this for next week, is once, for example, here, you remember the file, the icons on the desktop that I just showed you earlier, the little white thing, you move them around, etc. What you can imagine is but it's the same principle. You take a page, you put it on inside a box. Let's say you have a purple box, you grab a page of the document and you drop it on the box. Those would be the to read next, basically. And what it would do is generate a JSON or a text file and whatever, and then email it to someone. Let's say the person who did store the experience, we ask them their email address, and then at the end of the before they remove the headset, there is like a email it to me thing, and then they get a piece of text. Because I think if we want to, my demonstration is a lot about bringing text in, or documents rather of different kinds, and convert them. And I would argue it works to some extent, but it doesn't do the let's remove the headset and what's out of it. And I think an easy win there is here is an email, and then do whatever you want with it. Take that paragraph or that chapter or whatnot, and then read it on your iPad or print it or anything.
I'm not really worried about that. That is nice, but not super worried. It's just like not that long ago we didn't have Retina screens on our computers. They were chunky, and we read just fine. So of course it should be. It is a principle that you should be able to read where you find it most appropriate, even on a Kindle type device. Of course, absolutely agree. But in terms of reading an XR, it shouldn't be our main focus. It should be the visual environments. But there's a beautiful thing here by Jessie. So I asked her a question about the formatting. Please read what I put in the text. Actually, I'll just read it for the record. She said, that's why I want to practice and format my writings in author after Rome, because the future of text for me is a snippets building experience with not final glossary of the connected concepts you map across this snippets from distributed documents. Right? I think we have agreed that our notion of authoring shouldn't be write a long column of stuff. It should be about connecting bits. And XR is great for the connecting bits. So ideally, and we're not only focusing on academic documents next year, it'll be more poems and our own notes and all of that stuff. You know, it's pardon my French, but it will be hypercard in space. Right? There will be so much of this is a little chunk. It connects to these things in this way. Here's a little chunk. So the chunk needs to look nice. But of course, it's not going to be nice as a beautifully printed book. So I think we're entirely fully aligned as long as we really...
I beg to differ. I think the one thing I've learned how to working in those sort of, you might say, card type spaces is what people learn is messy is good. If it's looking clean, you're dicking around with the UI and you're not doing the writing and the intellectual thought process. And everyone's embarrassed about it, which is why whenever people show their work, the first thing they say is, "Oh, it looks terribly messy." But actually, you look through it and you see the wonder of what they're doing. And it might not be my style and somebody else's style, but it's their style and it works. So that I think is interesting. And whatever Julia, whatever her name is, really ought to look at Tinderbox. Because in fact, one thing that's missing in something we're doing is some of the prior art in this area, which I think would help a lot.
Just for clarification, which bit did you disagree with?
When you're talking about hypercards, it's a skeuomorphic slant to it. So that the way you're describing it was about having nice cards and things. The real leverage that I've got from now some decades of working in a sort of basically notionally a card type setting, but the whole point is it's not cards. And if you let go of that and thinking they sort of should be a certain size or something, it's just massively freeing, because you stop worrying about where things fit or how they look or whether they're all the same font or whatever. And you actually engage with the intellectual thought and the connections you're trying to make. And I can't understress that, because it's there.
What did I say to imply? What did I say to imply that it has to be this font and this size of this card?
Run the video back. But essentially, when you were describing the hypercard, you said it should look nice. And the point is, I'm not saying it should look bad. What I'm trying to get across is that the impulse, if you want to get the benefit from this sort of work and this sort of thinking, if you start from the aesthetic beauty of the interface, you will basically not get the outcome benefit.
We don't need to bring that up every single discussion about whether doing interface or going from the data side. We do that with a great...
No, this is not about the data. You're shifting. You're shifting. I'm not talking about the data.
Mark, you just shifted it. Because I didn't. Yes, you did. You talked about the beauty of the interface, wind the video back, as you said. All I'm saying, and I don't think it's controversial in this group, there will be text on a display that will need to be legible and readable. But the key thing is how they connect to other text. Where in the world do we disagree on that? We completely disagree, don't disagree on that at all. I don't think it's a point of contention, is it?
No, I was merely trying to make the point that the important thing is, and I think it's wrong to dismiss it as data because it's not conceivably something. Is to just say that the writing that you do is I'd rather, I mean, in a sense, I try to defocus on the box. I'm not worried about whether the box is this side or that shape or whatever. I'm thinking, how does this bit of text relate to that? Or the thing that can't possibly be in the environment in at the moment? How will I capture
Mark,
that?
please, okay, we're 20 minutes over time, and we're getting into a fake discussion here because we are not arguing that. Fabien was talking about how people are not going to read an XR. It's not going to be the key thing, right? That's totally fair enough. However, in a knowledge environment, there will be text. If there is text, that text has to be readable, right? How it is readable, I'm not saying it needs to look like, Garamond 12 point on a gray background. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that I don't think that we're going towards reproducing ACM columns of text. We all agree on that. That is where we want to get away from. We want to look at exactly what you're saying, Mark, how the knowledge connects, what the shape of the knowledge is, how we can interact with the knowledge. Whatever knowledge is on the screen, I hope will be in small, small pieces.
Yeah. Well, and I just say, do spend some time to read up on the history of sort of note card and story space and how it led to hypertext and the maps in it, because I think it's the prior art partly to your map. I mean, it's richer, but I think that's really useful and that feeds into what we're doing here.
Mark,
and it just doesn't turn up much in our discussion.
It doesn't turn up much in our discussion, but thanks to you, partly, I do have a PhD in that particular area. And I'm not saying that my map is a model at all. My map has been very useful for me to learn a lot of things that don't work. So what we need to do now, and the fact that you're here 20 minutes over, Fabien, you have no idea how grateful I am, to look at the space, to look at real knowledge in space. It's really, really hard. All the apps and environments we've tried on the headsets, they kind of work. But I think that the ones who are in the room now, and also the community at large, we do agree that there's a lot to do. And how you have this really legible and easy on the eyes in whatever, and you have this and you have that's where we're going, and it's really good. Anyway, yeah, see you later, Peter. I think we're
I have to go, guys.
Yeah,
have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.